Welcome to the latest edition of Circling the Bases. I'm DJ Short, and with me here once again is Scott Pianowski from Yahoo. We're live on Twitch this afternoon, so thanks for joining us over there. And if you're listening in podcast form or watching later on YouTube, we're recording on Wednesday afternoon. A ton of afternoon baseball and some interesting games to keep an eye on. We have Jacob deGrom and Grayson Rodriguez later today. That's going to be a blast. Rodriguez making his major league debut. This is also our first Waiver Wire Wednesday of the season. We're going to do this every Wednesday throughout the season. How's it going, Scott?
Going great. I will not tell people to pick up Rodriguez so I don't jinx him the way I did with Baty on Monday. I feel terrible about that. Pumped him up, drafted him in the Friends and Family League, wrote him up on Tuesday, and now he's hurt. Well, hopefully not too long with that thumb injury, but you worry about that. That changes the trajectory of that story. We knew Grayson Rodriguez was coming, right? It's just a matter of when. The fact that Baltimore does it in the first week of the season, basically, and then he goes up against deGrom. This is the one game you need to watch. And I don't know about you, but I love these during the week when you get the baseball, A to Z. It starts early, it ends late. You have a game on constantly. Those are my favorite days. You get to watch more of the action. It's a little bit more spread out. There's always something going on. And excited to jump into Waiver Wire Wednesday because, as we always talk about, the bottom of your roster should be fluid. It's never too early to make pickups. I know you're going to do a lot of these on spec. You don't have proof these guys are going to be good yet, but if you don't add them, somebody else will. And your hit rate doesn't need to be that high. If we give you 10 players today, if 2 or 3 of these guys have staying power, you actually are doing pretty well. It's kind of like real baseball, right? If you're hitting 300, you're doing well. If, let's say, 3 of these guys end up being long-term plays for you, that's a pretty good hit rate.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I'll take it. I like setting the bar low. So we'll
sure. So we each have one of my picks sets the bar really low because he's always around the Mendoza line. So maybe it's gonna be maybe it's gonna be 2 for 10. We'll see.
Spoiler alert here. Okay, we each have 5 recommendations for you guys, and we also have a fun wrinkle with these recommendations. You see just how MLB has incorporated a pitch clock this season. We're going to do the same on some of these Waiver Wire Wednesday episodes. Scott actually sent me a list of his 5 recommended pickups. I'm going to pick one of them at random, and Scott will have 60 seconds to make his pitch for that particular player. We have a clock and countdown ready to go as well. So you ready to hear the player you'll talk about?
For sure. A lot of people have been said over the years that Pianowski needed a pitch clock anyway. So, much overdue innovation right here.
Wait, so no 70s hockey references here?
Not yet. We'll see.
Okay, Scott. So I want to hear your pitch on one of the newest Twins this season, Joey Gallo. Why should people give him another chance? Ready?
Sure, let's do it. Joey Gallo. Now, career average, he's the Mendoza line. Career average is 200, all right? But he'll probably play mostly against righties. You won't have to worry about him against lefties. And I just think New York and LA were bad for Gallo. He's hit the 40 home runs in the season. He's a decent player in OBP league. I just think Minnesota, right place for time for Gallo. He's going to hit probably 215 or 220, but that's worth it if you're getting 35 home run.
All right. Hey, you have time to spare. You can fill it.
Unfortunately, I didn't have anything deep on Gallo in the sense that he's not going to steal bases. Minnesota, I think, is a plus lineup. I don't think it's a overboard lineup at plus 12 offense maybe. But mostly this is just about, I just think New York, some players don't fit that media market well. And I think Gallo's one of those guys. I think he can relax more. Minnesota's not an antagonistic media market or fan base. So I think he could probably relax and maybe spread his wings. And he's available, I think, right now in about 3/4 of Yahoo leagues. There we go. There's the horn.
Good. You did it. I like the pitch. I think my slight concern with Gallo this year is that I do expect league batting averages to be a little bit higher just by extension of the shift restrictions. He should benefit from the lack of shifts as well. That is a plus for him. But how much would you reasonably expect for a batting average for Joey Gallo this year? Like your most optimistic batting average for Gallo, what would it be?
Yeah, it's probably 225, and that's a high end. Also, I like him more if you're in a format. If you're in a Yahoo format, we can make daily changes. If you're in an NFBC format, where you get 2 changes a week, and you can really go lineup specific. Maybe it's a weekend where the Twins face all righties, and they're like 3, 4, 5 starters. He's not facing any aces or that. If you have a league, you can get the center cut of Gallo, or maybe in DFS play where you're just using him when the matchup looks right. That's and I know every league isn't like that. If you set your league once a week and you have to look at those lefties, Gallo will be a dead spot. I get it. He might not make a lot of sense, but I'm going to do maintenance with my roster every day in fantasy. It's one of the great things about fantasy baseball is there's another game tomorrow, and I don't mind having a managed player like Gallo. Also, a very sneaky thing, when you have somebody who is platoon specific, I always like it when that player is not on the West Coast, because if he's on the West Coast, a lot of times you have to wait until the lineup comes out. You don't have all the full information. So if I'm going to have to manage a player like Gallo, at least he's Central Time with Minnesota. So I'll be able to make an informed choice without having to guess who's playing later on in the night.
That's a good point. That is definitely an underrated part of West Coast players, or at least non-East Coast time zone players. So I'll give you my first pick in a minute, but just a reminder first here. Every season is draft season. Get your Rotoworld Draft Guide bundle today and dominate your football, baseball, and basketball drafts packed with profiles, rankings, projections. Order today and get all 3 Rotoworld Draft Guides for the price of 2. Plus, use promo code Barry and save an extra 20% off at checkout. Again, that's promo code Barry, Berry, and you get all 3 draft guides for the price of 2. So my first pick this week is Brian Anderson with the Brewers. He's available in 86% of Yahoo leagues. That number is probably shrinking based off the game that he had on Tuesday night against the Mets, a 2-homer game. Now has 3 homers and 10 RBIs on the year, has hit safely in 5 straight games to begin the year. This was as of Wednesday afternoon, where Brian Anderson is actually starting in right field today. So we'll see if he keeps that hit streak alive. Of course, Anderson has dealt with injuries the past couple of years, but he was an above average hitter with the Marlins in 2019 and 2020, put up 31 homers with an 811 OPS over 185 games during that time. That's an 114 OPS plus. So again, you got to factor in the ballpark, very pitcher friendly ballpark there in Miami for his tenure with that team. And now he's in a completely opposite situation in Milwaukee. The Luis Urias hamstring injury basically locks him in the lineup on a daily basis, whether it's third base on most days or in right field like today. The Brewers are facing a lefty, David Peterson, so he's in right field. So he's going to be in there pretty much every day. I actually drafted him in my NL only labor league and in Tout Wars because I was watching to see if, he's kind of one of those guys, even when he was good, he was kind of boring. So I was kind of interested to see, like, he finally goes to a hitter friendly situation. He's healthy. Maybe there's something here.
I like it. If you hadn't picked Anderson in the first run of our waivers, I would have picked him myself. So he's certainly getting 2 thumbs up from us. And make sure when you point and click on B. Anderson, you're not picking up Brett Anderson, his teammate on the Brewers. Some knucklehead did that in the Yahoo Friends and Family League, whose name rhymes with mine. But thankfully, I'm the commissioner of that league. I was able to delete that transaction, not count it against my cap. I'm sure they'll be howling from all my opponents. But you mentioned it, a boring player, but things have clicked here. Better park, better lineup. He's got 2 roster positions he qualifies in Yahoo. He'll be in the lineup just about every day. And 2019 wasn't that long ago when he was a plus offensive player. I think there's every reason why he should be rostered in 12-team and up. I think not just the 15-teamers, but I think even in the 12-team leagues, Brian Anderson's worth a roster spot.
All right, Scott, who you got next?
So this is the most obvious. A lot of times we use 50% as don't give me somebody over 50% rostered. You just wasted my time. So I'm kind of straddling the fence here, but Jorge Mateo is at 50% rostered. I know the average isn't going to be great, but you get category juice. Since the beginning of last year, 15 home runs, 39 stolen bases. He already has 4 this year. And although the Red Sox helped Baltimore in that first series, the Orioles have sounded the alarm that they're going to run as much as they can. Jorge Mateo comes out of the dugout with the green light. I don't know. I talked about Gallo earlier. Gallo legitimately could wreck your average. I just think Mateo's going to ding your average a little bit. You just have to make up for it a little bit elsewhere. But I think he'll hit enough to stay in the lineup. And if somebody is filling the home run and stolen base columns, again, we call it category juice. If somebody gives you category juice, I really don't matter. It doesn't matter to me what the rest of the player profile is. I think he should be rostered in every mixed league.
Yeah, and I think maybe it was last week, we each picked a player outside the top 200 who could be a top 100 player. Given the environment that we've seen in this short time, this 5-6 days so far in the season, Jorge Mateo could be one of those guys. I mean, he could legitimately steal 50 plus bases this year and hit double digit homers too. And that might be good enough to be a top 100 player this year. So I agree. I think he should be rostered pretty much everywhere. Next up for me is someone I'm looking at more as maybe someone you make a call on a weekly basis, or if it's a situation where you can make daily lineup changes. Jurickson Profar. He's available in 80% of Yahoo leagues. Off to a slow start after signing late in spring training. Got a late start on the season, in fact, just 1 for 11 thus far, but it's understandable he would need some time to shake the rust as he gets back in the swing of game action here. But fact is, he's projected to be the regular leadoff hitter for the Rockies, playing left field every day. And this is a great time to jump on board. The Rockies will begin a 7-game homestand on Thursday. That starts with 4 games against the Nationals. So you want to jump in on that as the Rockies presumably will score some runs against that Nationals pitching staff, which looks pretty rough. The Rockies, in fact, will play 10 out of their next 13 games at Coors Field. So even if you aren't overly excited about what Profar can do over a full season, you'll probably want to take a shot on him for now.
Yeah, location. Managing the Colorado schedule is one of the most important things we do as fantasy managers, especially in those weekly leagues. And Profar, by OPS Plus, was a plus offensive player in 2022 and 2020. So I think his run with the Padres was maybe a little bit better than expected. This will not be the last time you hear me say post-hype sleeper on this show. I know Profar, maybe it's too late in his career to think that there's a great upside here, but at one point he was the number 1 prospect in baseball. Also, he only qualifies at one spot right now, but he's played so many places on the field. If injuries happen, maybe the Rockies move him around. So you might get some positional juice with Profar later on in the season. But the bottom line is this: if you are hitting near the top of a Colorado Rockies lineup, you're relevant in fantasy, at least during the home schedule. You're going to look for those weeks when the home slate bunches up. As you said, there's one coming. There's a glorious Colorado homestand on the way. So Jurickson Profar is back in our lives.
Yep. Who you got next, Scott?
So I probably made people mad giving a 50% player out. Oh, he's gone in my leagues. Now I'll give you a player you won't want because he's only 2% rostered. I'm going to give you Adbert Alzoaly, and it's really simple. Okay, he struck out 5 guys in a relief appearance. We're following the walks. We're following the strikeouts. Now, there are other relievers who may get saves in Chicago. We may talk about one of them later, but if Alzoaly is not going to be the closer, and I think maybe he might get a save look later, I want him in a multiple inning role, which he looks like he might have with 2 innings, 5 strikeouts the other day, because that leads to maybe more potential wins. And we've seen one of the big changes since fantasy's been around, like in the internet era and the Yahoo era and the era that we've been doing at DJ, is more wins are filtered into the relief staffs. And these guys, these middle relievers are more valuable now than I think they were maybe 15 or 20 years ago. They smooth over the ratios. And look I know it's still kind of a small sample, but look at what Alzoaly has done for the Cubs since joining the team late last year. We're talking about 18 innings, 2 walks, 27 strikeouts. When I see ratios like that, I want to start hugging strangers. So is it for the 8 and 10 team leagues? No. But I think 15 team for sure. And even in 12 team leagues where you're just looking to massage those ratios, this is the type of player who probably wasn't drafted in your league. You can add him for nothing, just the opportunity cost of the other player you were going to add. And I think they end up 10 or 12 of these guys will pop during the season. I think he might be one of them.
I mean, think about you're holding a starting pitcher on your roster who gets like 1 start a week. And what's the best case scenario for that pitcher? They pitch 6 innings. They give up 1 or 2 runs. Maybe they strike out a batter per inning, right? But Alzoaly, like, let's say he pitches 6 innings in a week. He could strike out 10 batters and give up no runs, So there is a difference there that can be made with sort of these middle inning relievers. And maybe he could reel off 2 wins in a week. So I do think there's some relevancy there. I'm going to take the other side of the coin with this Cubs bullpen. Michael Fulmer, available in 63% of Yahoo leagues. I think this is mostly about Fulmer just not getting a save yet. I think fantasy managers are looking to see how this bullpen is going to play out, but I still think he's clearly in good position in this Cubs bullpen. We've already seen a scenario where Brad Boxberger pitched the 8th, Fulmer pitched the 9th with a 4-run lead. I think that's likely where David Ross wants to go. Not to say that Alzoaly couldn't jump in the mix here, but maybe Alzoaly is more of that fireman 7th, 8th inning, high leverage situation guy when you really need a strikeout, where Fulmer could be used as more of the traditional 9th inning closer, comes in the game with nobody on base, 2-run lead type of thing. But Fulmer is basically rostered in the same amount of leagues as AJ Puck, Will Smith with the Rangers, Pierce Johnson with the Rockies, Danny Jimenez, Scott McGough. Brusdar Gratterall is actually rostered in more leagues than Fulmer, and I feel better about Fulmer than I do about Gratterall. So I think well, maybe we just want to see that first save. I get it. But if Fulmer's out there, I think he could be pretty solid for a Cubs team, which I think we both expect to be pesky this year. There's going to be a bunch of save chances here.
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a double agent here. I want to make it clear. If you only have one chip to spend in this bullpen, I would go with Fulmer first, and his rostership reflects that. He does appear to be first in line for the next save chance that they get. And the one outing that he got hit, Milwaukee had a couple of cheap hits off him, and he got squeezed on a couple of pitches. I don't think he looked bad in that game at all. He's closed before. He was at one point a really good starter. Was he Rookie of the Year? I think once
he was.
I want to say, yeah. So it wasn't that long ago that Michael Fulmer was a dynamic starter. As we know, most of the great relievers are, for whatever reason, failed starters or guys who don't start anymore. So he's the one guy I would, if I was going to take somebody in the bullpen here, I would take Fulmer over Alzoaly, but because I think he's going to get the saves. I think they're both worthy of rostership. And you also, I just want to mention really quickly, you mentioned Gratterall. What people ask, what am I looking for when the fantasy season starts? Really all during the season, but especially early. Nebulous save situations, bullpen situations, right? What happened in Los Angeles Tuesday night? Gratterall pitched in the middle of the game. Evan Phillips closed at the end of the game. It doesn't matter necessarily what teams tell us. It's what they do. And in this game, that the Dodgers held the lead the whole game, they said, okay, Gratterall's a holds guy. Phillips is a save guy. It doesn't mean it will be that way every night, but first in line, the first guy who gets a save in any city has the baton. And a lot of times that's all you need. You have ownership of the gig is such a huge part of this. So I want to see in these nebulous situations, who gets the ninth inning first, who gets the first save, because if that player comes through, so often the manager will push the button again. So I guarantee if Fulmer does get a save this week, his rostership will probably bump up like 15 or 20% immediately. Oh, yeah. Why not jump the line and get in right now?
I like it. So next up for me is Zach Eflin. He's available in 55% of Yahoo leagues. And I will acknowledge here out front, I might be wrong about the Rays. And it's only taken me a week to say that. I think I took the under on their win total, which was at 89 when we did our over-under wins total episode. And here they are, 5-0 right now? And Shane McClanahan, the Rays, he's on the hill today, Wednesday. Jeffrey Springs looked amazing over the weekend. Drew Rasmussen is solid. Tyler Glasnow, when he comes back, oozes potential. But Zach Eflin could be a huge key to this rotation. Signed for 3 years, $40 million over the winter. The Rays were hoping to unlock some of the flashes of potential that Eflin has shown over the years, and so far, so good. He looked great in his season debut. Granted, it was against the Tigers, but Eflin, did what he was supposed to do. He took care of business, allowed just 1 run on 3 hits and 1 walk over 5 innings. Notched 5 strikeouts, induced 13 swinging strikes on his 74 pitches. By the way, the bulk of those whiffs came on his curveball and a retooled changeup. Like, that might be what the Rays think that they could unlock here with him. Really interesting movement on that pitch, keeping the ball on the ground with his sinker as well. I think the Rays might be working their magic once again. If it doesn't work out, so be it. But I think in a mixed league where you're playing 10, 12 teams, he's probably going to be your 5th, 6th starter. And that's not so bad.
I like it. One of the things we like to do is we like to bet where the smart teams bet. And that contract tells you that Tampa Bay believes in Eflin. He wasn't a wait and see guy or kick the tires guy. They gave him money. They expect him to be good. So he gets the tutelage and the coaching of Tampa Bay. And this is usually a plus defensive team. The park they play in is pitcher favoring. So a lot of the dots connect. And again, I'm comfortable. When Tampa Bay makes a bet on a player, I'm comfortable backlining that bet. So I'm happy to get involved in Eflin as you are. Next one for me is Mitch Garver, and it comes down to 2 really simple things. One, he's a catcher who won't catch all the time, which is fantasy friendly for us. And it wasn't that long ago. He was a really good offensive player with an OPS plus of, I think, 121 for his career. I think there's a 25 or 30 home run season still in his range of outcomes, just needs to be healthy. He hasn't been healthy in recent seasons, but if he's going to get a lot of his playing time not catching, I think that just gives him an easier path to play a full season. And right now, rostered, I know a lot of Yahoo leagues are just 1 catcher, so this will speak to the rostership tag, but 16% on Mitch Garver, it should at least be double that.
I agree. He's only a couple of years away from hitting 30 homers. Like, he has legit power in that bat. I think the Rangers lineup has a chance to be really good too. So the supporting cast matters. And like you said, like a catcher that doesn't catch every day. Like that's money to me. And he's had some health concerns too, so that's going to help him stay in the lineup, hopefully. But I'm into that as well. I know there's some leagues where maybe he doesn't qualify at catcher yet, but if he can be a little bit patient, he could be a really good find here. Up next for me is actually an injury stash. I don't think there's anything wrong with a good injury stash if you have some flexibility on your roster. And I'm going to recommend Brayan Bello, available in 91% of Yahoo leagues. Bello fell behind the other pitchers in Red Sox camp, had some forearm soreness. It wasn't anything serious, but he's progressing well, should be able to join the Red Sox rotation in around mid-April. I think he's pitching in some not quite an official minor league rehab assignment type game yet, but extended spring training starts. I think he's actually going to make a start today. Then we'll probably go on an official rehab start. And then from there, he could be ready to join the Red Sox rotation. Bello had mixed results as a rookie last year, 4.71 ERA, 11 starts, 2 relief appearances, 55 strikeouts and 57 in a third innings. The velocity's there. He did a good job avoiding hard contact last year, especially in terms of barrels. Keeps the ball on the ground with his sinker, change up the big whiff pitch, showed good vertical movement with his slider in a small sample last year as well. And he also worked with Pedro Martinez during the offseason. Nice little feather in your cap to get advice from one of the greatest living pitchers. And the other thing about Bello, comparing him to Grayson Rodriguez, Bello threw 153 in a third innings between the majors and the minors last year. That's a lot. So workload shouldn't be an issue with Bello. And it would not surprise me, actually, if he is more valuable than Grayson Rodriguez in mixed leagues this season.
Wow, that's a spicy hot take. I love it.
Mhm.
And man, you hit so many great points there. It's interesting he's working with Pedro because he has the same body type as Pedro.
Yep, he does.
So look, he doesn't. His upside isn't Pedro Martinez's because we'd never say that about anybody. But he does remind me there is some overlap in their skills. And we talk about the 3 true outcomes, right? How did Bello do last year in the 3 true outcomes? Well, he struck out about a batter per inning. That's great. He allowed 1 home run all season. That's excellent. The control wasn't good. He walked better than 4 batters per 9 innings. But of all the things that a young pitcher can get better at, I always feel control. You can work on that. That will get better as he becomes more confident and he learns how to pitch. And again, he couldn't have a better mentor than Pedro Martinez. And we know this Red Sox staff, man, it looks ugly right now. There's going to be availability when Bello is healthy. So I think this is a great, whether you're stashing him in some leagues or maybe for some of the more shallow leagues, you just know this name when he's healthy, when they announce he's rejoining the team, be first in line. Then you'll have to play to your season to taste the specs of your league. But if nothing else, he should be somebody you're aware of. And I certainly see plausible upside for him in the second half of the season.
Pete Alonso just hit a 2-run home run.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll take it. We'll take it for sure.
Just from the Waiver Wire Baseball Studios on Wednesday. Action as it happens. I
pick up Pete Alonso.
Yes, I'm gonna drop. I feel kind of bad that I'm gonna drop. I don't know. Some 5th round first baseman I drafted just to get Pete Alonso. But yeah. Actually, I tried to get. I was trying to come up with Matt Olson's name. I tried to get Matt Olson or Pete Alonso on every one of my teams. Mm-hmm. And so when one of them hits a home run, my phone blows up because they're on all my Yahoo teams. So it's usually, when your phone blows up, it's one of 2 things. Either, you picked up Brett Baty everywhere and he's hurt, or you roster, Alonso or Olson. They just hit a home run. I'll tell you who hit a home run Tuesday that hasn't landed yet, Spencer Torkelson. He's my final pick. Mm-hmm. He's at 16% rostered. Here's your post-hype case, right? He was the first overall pick in his draft class. This is the guy I was hoping I was going to get the elevator pitch on because I think that the dots are really connecting here. First overall pick in his draft class. 5th top 5 pick going into 2022. He doesn't have a great season, but he's still so young. And Detroit, a team that I was absolutely dumping on after Springs struck out 12 of them on Sunday. I thought Springs could have no-hit them for 20 innings if needed. They took him out after 6. All Detroit got was a couple of cheap hits that game, but I guess one of them was a home run. The other hit was kind of cheap, an infield hit. But Torkelson in the Houston series, 4 for 8, a homer, a double, a walk. I realize the Tigers lineup isn't good, but at least they have Riley Green and Torkelson, their best friends. They bat back to back. At least the middle of the lineup is good. Spencer Torkelson he's a get it guy. sometimes the development curve is different for everybody. Not everybody hits the ground running. And again, I'm not comparing him to Mike Trout, but let's not forget that Mike Trout's first season wasn't much of a fantasy thing. He wasn't that good his first year, and then he took off in the second season. Development is different for everybody. The Tigers, I still think, are going to be a bad baseball team, but Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson are going to be worth your while. And again, Torkelson, I think he should be about 50% rostered. I'm shocked he's down at 16% because anytime a hot prospect gets off to a good start, this wasn't a prospect. He was the first pick in his draft class. He was a top 5 player on every draft board last year. People were thrilled, were so excited about this guy. And then he has a mediocre season and people write it off like his career's over. I know the team's bad. Spencer Torkelson's going to be good.
Yeah, it's amazing how that happens. I mean, I think we've been spoiled by so many young players coming up and just being great right away so that, when one fails, has some ups and downs, like we just give up. I don't know if like Jared Kelenic will ever be the prospect that we were hoping he might be. We'll see. The early results aren't promising this year, but yeah, sometimes it takes a little while, and sometimes, hey, baseball's really hard, and prospects don't figure it out. So definitely someone that I think you should take a shot on too. Maybe not in a 10-team league, 12-team, maybe, especially if you have a corner infield spot. Like, why not take a shot? Just a reminder here, download the Rotoworld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in your app store today. And if you had Brett Baty favorited today, you would know that the MRI on his thumb showed no structural damage.
Okay.
He is considered day-to-day. Now, this was the same thumb that he had surgery on last year. So naturally, there's some concern. At this point, the top prospect in the Mets system. They should slow play it probably as much as they possibly can, make sure he's pain-free, because I think the Mets are going to need him, and very soon. But Scott, you did not break Brett Baty. It seems like he's going to be okay.
Good, because I was ready to donate my thumb to Brett Baty in the interest of science and the interest of baseball. The thing that's so frustrating is that the dots really connected because Escobar was off to a poor start, and the Mets have had a lot of things go wrong. Quintana gets hurt. Scherzer's had a couple of bad starts. He'll be fine. Verlander gets hurt. And I just think Steve Cohen, just the ethos of this team is like, our chips are all in the middle, right? We're not messing around here. So I thought Baty was going to be with the team in April, and now with the injury, it just makes sense. Okay, we're thinking long term. Let's not rush anything. Let's not rush him back. Let's make sure he's healthy. So now the timetable is totally different. And I have to back off everything I said on Baty, but still certainly a bright future. And somebody I do think is going to have fantasy relevance, but now he's more of a second half play when I thought he could have been a springtime play first.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. The Mets offense has been bad so far. They've scored 4 runs in 3 innings today, so that's a plus. I expect them to be a good team, even minus Brett Baty. I think this is an above average offense. There's just too many talented hitters for them to be this bad as they've been over the first week. But I think we're going to see Francisco Alvarez and Brett Baty play major roles for this team at some point this season. And if they are lacking come trade deadline, let's say Baty's hurt or maybe struggling, and Alvarez can't catch, whatever, Cohen's going to go out and get someone. He's going to demand to go trade for a lineup upgrade. So I think this Mets lineup is going to be solid even through these initial struggles here. So our first Waiver Wire Wednesday is in the books. Thanks for taking part in our first ever pitch clock. We will see what the feedback is from the baseball community on our pitch clock. So far, it's mostly positive for the actual game. We will see about the fantasy game as well.
How do you feel about the pitch clock? I'm in favor. I like, one thing I didn't think about, but one thing I really like about the pitch clock is as it winds down, I just know a pitch is coming. I know when the action is going to start, where a lot of times you just wouldn't know. Is the pitcher just going to hold the ball? Is he trying to get the base runner to go back to the base? It's like, the NFL, right? You see the clock going down, or the NBA, you see the shot clock going down. The action's about to hit. And that's the same way with baseball now. And I like that I think I mentioned this Monday, it seems like all the networks have found a way to incorporate it on their screen, but it's not obtrusive. It's not like this big Sesame Street number. Much love to Sesame Street, but I don't want to see a big 7654. I just want to see a tiny little number tucked away in the score box. And I think everybody's gotten that right. So it's all about pace, man. It's all about pace. I don't mind being in the car for an hour. I just don't want to be stop and go for an hour. Instead, I want that continuous drive. I think baseball got this right.
Yeah, I think after a while we're not going to really notice it. It hasn't bothered me. I think maybe it bothers some people who like to have baseball on in the background, and you don't necessarily have to pay as much attention to it. You can sort of, cruise Twitter and have an in-game chat essentially with your friends or whatever. But it doesn't maybe lend itself to that as much anymore. We'll see. But yeah, I think overall having games end in 2.5 hours is pretty sweet. I don't mind it whatsoever.
Sure.
But it's less about the length of game than it is the pace, and I think you're totally right about that. Good stuff, Scott. We'll see you next Monday for our next episode. Our Monday episodes are mostly going to be focused on weekend recap, headlines, that sort of thing. Any interesting fab bids from the weekend. Wednesdays will be waiver wire focus. So definitely subscribe to the show. If you haven't already, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, be sure to rate and review as well. Also, follow us on Twitter if you don't already. Scott is at Scott_Pianowski on Twitter. I'm at DJ Short. Take care.